Hey all, it's Denise and I'm in my studio today and I'm editing a video with 3 pieces, actually 4 pieces, but I did a class last week, a one-day mixed media workshop where we each created 3 12-inch by 12-inch panels, wood panels. Whether they all went together or whether each one stood on its own, we each worked on 3 12 by 12s. And as an instructor, I do demos, but very rarely do I ever get to finish the demos. So I headed back to my studio at the F1VEart Studio and finished off my pieces this week and just set the camera up as I worked on them. And then therefore I'm doing a voiceover to explain it because there were a lot of people in the studio that day. It was hard to video and record at the same time, do voice record. So here you can see me activating my canvas. This was a board that had a stencil relief on it with a stencil that had lettering. And I went over that with orange paint, and now I just went ahead and scribbled over it so that it would get the layers down, get the base down for me to start laying papers. And there was actually a list of things that I read off to the students last weekend. And so each of these things on the list went onto the canvas before we got started. So it kind of gave us somewhere to go. And I will try to post that list in a PDF down in the description. But what we did on the list was add a scribble, add 2 scraps of printed or handmade paper, add 1 circle in paper. You can draw it, it can be dimensional. Here's my circles in a handmade paper. You can do 1 rectangle, same, it can be paper or drawn or dimensional. So I have that, this tissue paper I'm putting on right there is in a rectangle shape. You can add 1 piece of black and white paper, paint or printed, and actually I think that's what those black polka dots was my black and white. I have another piece coming up that's going to be my rectangle. And then add some text and add a piece of corrugated cardboard. So those are all elements that go into the original, all 3 of the panels to get us started. And it's just a great way to get something on your surface and kind of move from there and see what you can create from there. Okay, so once I've got all my elements added onto the board, I pick a color. I'm not too married to whatever this base color is. Sometimes I do a dark transparent color. Sometimes it's more opaque like this one. This is a house paint that I'm using, which is one of my favorite paints because of how smooth and creamy it is to go onto the surface. And what I'm doing is I'm just going around and kind of negative painting around my shapes to see in what direction do I want this to go. For me, I really enjoy line work in my pieces. So it also helps me figure out where I want to go. So I'll grab my Stabilo and sketch out some lines and create some sections. It makes it a little bit more interesting for me to figure out what I'm doing when I have those sections figured out, so I'm not looking at just the piece as a whole. For me, it works. Not for everybody, I'm sure. Everybody has their own way of doing it, their own style of doing it, but this really works for me. And then I can just continue on and keep painting around the surface with the color that I've chosen, knowing that this may not be the exact color I end up with in the end. I just want to get something on my canvas so I can see the shapes that are important and start choosing what gets to stay and what has to go. I do have to say, I love painting around these little circles. And if you've ever taken a class with me or from me, you know how much I love this particular tissue paper. It's a napkin and it has little watercolor circles. So when I paint around them, I don't get too attached to if they stay a circle or if they end up being a completely different shape. I like the irregularity and I love the relaxation it brings to just sit and paint around the circles. And once I have that initial base color down, that's just my first coat. I will go over it and over it and over it until I get the color I like. And here I'm just lightening up that same color. I love the buildup of the layers of paint. I like layers showing through to the next, around the edges. You can see in this piece some of the orange from the very washes that I did on the original on the very beginning are still peeking through, and now I'm just going back and refining, adding another color, a lighter color, and I'm refining around some of the cutout shapes that I've added on. pieces, as in a lot of my pieces that I've been creating lately with flowers, I find photos of flowers I've actually have just recently received a few really beautiful photographic flower books. And once I look through them, I tear out what I like and recreate with them. Sometimes I let the flowers stay as they are, stay just a photograph that's been cut out and glued onto my page. Other times I like to go in and enhance them with my own colors or my own brush strokes, and I like the juxtaposition of the printed flower and the painted flower. So I do a lot of that in my art, and here I'm just going in, and I believe this is a protea, and just making it a little bit more defined and make it a little bit more of my own. Painting over the flowers and around the flowers also helps integrate them into the painting so they don't look like they've just been glued onto the surface. So I do like to get my paints and my papers kind of blended together. Can you believe it? I'm going over them with even a lighter color. And like I said before, it's back and forth, back and forth. You kind of look at it as for me, I look at it as I'm going along and I decide which direction I want this to go. And if you remember, this started with a really, really bright, acidy orange underneath. And now you can only just see little bits and pieces of that orange showing through, which I really love. And now that I've got that fourth piece that you just saw almost done, I'm going back to the other three pieces that were the demos that I was doing for the class. And I had continued on with them and finished them off, but now I'm going back and I'm doing the same thing I did with the one that you just watched me put together. I'm playing with my colors, going back and forth. I'm still covering things up that, not everything can be important. I don't need to keep everything in there. So I do want this to be a set of 4. So I'm going to go back and make sure that each of my pieces have pretty much the same coloration. They all have the same feel with the flower, with a single flower in each one. 3 of them have houses that I really, really liked. I couldn't find another house when I worked on that 4th one, so I put in a woman's face, but I still think they all work really nicely together. So I'm going to continue on just going back and forth with my colors until I get them just right. Now I've pulled up another one of the set of 4, and I just have to say, as I pull these up and work on each piece, continue on working on each piece, I really love the direction that this little series has gone in. And I like doing things like painting around the top of that little tower in that building and keeping a little bit of the blue showing through. It's those little bits and pieces that pop through and show through that create the history and create, you know, some interest of what is going on back there. So I don't worry about being so perfect around every little edge. I want it to look painterly. I want to see the artist's hand. And as I'm editing and watching this video, I gotta say, I'm really loving this little series. And here's another one of the pieces. This was actually the first one I did, and the one that inspired the other 3 to happen. I had a book on tulips, and I cut that tulip out, and I thought, oh my God, I just love the simplicity of the tulip. I love the very muted, very neutral background of everything with just that little bit of pink on each of the pieces that shows through. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this little series. I feel like I need to have a title for it, for the series of 4, and they definitely are lending themselves to something around home, something around the comforts and the beauty of home. So I almost have these 4 complete. I may go back in a day or 2 and add just a little tiny touch of gold leaf somewhere, just for a little tiny bit of bling. But I hope you enjoyed it, and stick around when I'm done working on these. I've only got a short little bit of time to go on this video, and stick around at the end and see the finished pieces and actually see them in a room setting. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here with me. I speeded things up in this video so you wouldn't have to sit and watch paint dry. And I think you get the idea of where I'm going with all of this. So if you enjoyed it, please don't forget, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for being here. Bye.